Curve on it. Red curve on it.
Holy cow, it's happening. Is it happening? Why is it happening? Is Donovan Mitchell going to be the new king of sports in New York City? The Utah Jazz and the New York Knicks have come together this last week to discuss the possibility of trading three-time All-Star Donovan Mitchell Jr. to the New York Knicks to play for his hometown in the Garden with the orange, white, and blues. Question is, for the New York Knicks, what price is too high for Donovan Mitchell? Here at Built by Sports, we are built by fans. And so for you guys at home, comment down below your thoughts on this trade and the possibilities for the New York Knicks, for the Utah Jazz, and for the NBA as a whole. Just simply an NBA fan listening in. Today, on Built by Sports, I am joined by my friend, Ty Lau.
How are you doing,
welcome
Parker?
to the podcast. Doing
Thank
good.
you,
How
sir.
are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Good. Let's get right to it then. And, of course, those who are listening, feel free to comment down below. Give us your thoughts on the New York Knicks, what they should do, and what price they should be willing to pay. Ty, let's start with the Knicks.
Yeah, the Knicks have a lot to think about, right? They picked up Jalen Brunson in the free agency. He showed out against us, the Jazz in the playoffs, and he played really well against the Suns, and he showed that he can be a proven 1-2 punch in the NBA, right? He can be able to lead a team. He can be able to drive, and he brings a little bit of fire, but he has similarities to Donovan Mitchell. He's 6'1", right? Yeah. He's a little bit more built. So do they really want to build around two players at that height, or do they want to kind of build around Brunson and C? And are they willing to give up all those picks, like you said? That's a big question.
No, those are great questions that I've heard as well, like pairing Donovan Mitchell with Brunson, will that work? Lots of other questions. Is Donovan Mitchell that guy? I see that number one. But, Ty, in your mind, like, disregarding any, those questions, right? Why do the Knicks go through with this? Why did they get Donovan Mitchell?
Easy pick right there. It's because Donovan Mitchell has been an all-star. The Knicks for the past, since Carmelo Anthony went there in his prime, they've been looking for that guy, the star player who wants to come to New York, who wants to be there to help them win, right? Donovan Mitchell, he's, been a 3-time All-Star last 3 years, has averaged, 20-plus points per game. He's a really likable player. A player that other players in the NBA can, hang around with. That was always one of the things that with Rudy Gobert, he kind of never fit in the NBA, right? He didn't play to the style of the NBA, but Donovan Mitchell does. He is a modern NBA all-star. Play fast, play downhill, shoot the three, and play little D. But that is definitely, one thing that Donovan Mitchell, his upside is he plays hard. He can score. He's going to score. He was so close this last year in multiple games about getting a triple-double, breaking that darn Jazz curse that's been there since Boozer. But definitely he brings that tenacity to a team that's going to help you win. He wants to win, and he brings that likability to where he could attract some other players to the Knicks. Maybe they won't be like all-star players, but Jeremy Grant, whose contract ends this next year with Portland, if Portland doesn't do amazing, that could be an option that the Knicks go and grab a Jeremy Grant type player who can play with them.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I notice how like a lot of what you're saying is they're not necessarily going after Donovan Mitchell just for winning and for the winning aspect of the game. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of it. They want to get into the playoffs more consistently. They want to win in the playoffs. So that's going to be a part of it, and I think Donovan does help them do that for sure. But I think there's other big factors of why they need Donovan Mitchell in New York City. Like you were saying, they haven't had a star since Jeremy Lin. And I say that tongue-in-cheek, obviously. But if we look at the response New York City had to Jeremy Lin, that just shows us how hungry they are for a new star. And I don't think this new cast of players that they have currently has really been feeding that hunger for them yet. Donovan Mitchell seems to be the perfect star to bring in. He's not only going to be the face of their franchise, but he's one of the big top 10 faces of the NBA right now. And so that puts New York City up there, marketing-wise, at the top of the league. Winning is going to be a big factor for them, but also a third thing for them is just the entertainment value Mitchell brings. You're talking about how he's a high-flying, super athletic, super entertaining, super skilled player. And so Donovan Mitchell, he checks off really 3 boxes for the New York Knicks: winning, entertainment, and marketing. It's something that the Knicks haven't had in a long time, and that brings the price up for Donovan, possibly, right? It brings more of a, not desperate, but more of a market for the New York Knicks, to bring
No, for sure. And that's the thing, like, I love that you said that, because that's one thought I had. Like, Donovan Mitchell will forever be known here in Utah for his likability. Like, fans would see him out and about in the streets, and he would have a conversation with them. There's multiple stories of, somebody sitting at a restaurant and they're like, oh my gosh, that's Donovan Mitchell. I'm not going to talk to him. I'm going to leave him alone. And he'd be like, hey, how you doing? And he would just go and talk to them. Yeah. Like, very likable guy. And like, he has his own shoe deal and it does really well. And that's while he's been here in Utah. Imagine if he goes there to New York. Like, the Knicks are going to just feast off of that. Like, jersey sales are going to go crazy. His shoe deal for himself, like for Donovan Mitchell, it's a no-brainer going to a bigger market. Like, it stings to say that because, we are fans of the Jazz and we're a small market. But for a player, like, you go to a big market, that your marketability for yourself as well is going to go up. He's going to make some money outside of basketball just because of going to New York. So, of course, that's enticing to any player
for sure.
To make that kind of money.
And kind of like, that brings me to the next question that we got for this trade. Like, on the other side, the Utah Jazz, why did the Utah Jazz do this? Like you were just talking about for the New York Knicks, but Donovan brings the Knicks. I could say the same thing for the Jazz. Donovan brings winning, Donovan brings entertainment, and marketability to the Utah Jazz. He's probably the most marketable player the Jazz have ever had in the history of the franchise.
And hands down, most marketable.
Hands down, yeah. And so, Ty, why did the Jazz
do this trade? Honestly, for the Jazz sake, you just traded away probably the centerpiece of your team in Rudy Gobert. Like, the whole offense, defense, like, I know a lot of people will say offense, that didn't run through Rudy. It did. He set the screens. He was the first person there to set a screen for the guards to start running that, right? He he was the heart and soul of that team for a lot of games to help them win. So we trade away that, and we have Donovan Mitchell now with a bunch of younger pieces and assets for the future. Donovan Mitchell's he's 25. He's, we've talked about it a second ago. He's 6'1", 6'2". His trajectory is probably the next 3-4 years is when he'll reach his prime. And with his athleticism, we've seen a lot of guards like Derrick Rose, who's athletic and, flashy like him, go down with some injuries around that age, right? They start going at that point. So the Jazz, they look at it in this way. Are we going to be able to retain Donovan Mitchell? Are we going to have enough pieces in a year or 2 years to be able to start contending for playoffs, like contending for the NBA Finals? Is that going to be enough to keep him here? Answer is probably not.
Probably not.
Right? So at this point where the Knicks don't have don't have those stars right now, they're kind of in a point where they're desperate to get a star to become relevant, because the East, think about the East right now. Brooklyn, if they would keep their team together, that could be a pretty dang good team if Simmons would actually play a game for once and stop being a baby. You got Simmons, you got Kyrie, and you got Durant, plus, some other pieces on that team around them. That's a good team. But then you got Philadelphia, you got Miami. But Miami sounds like they're trying to trade away a lot of their role players to get that one big star. So you get, if you get the Knicks, if you get Donovan Mitchell, that gets you a place in the playoffs. And with a lot of those younger pieces, if they can keep them in that trade, that gets you a playoff. So for the Jazz, it's more, this is a good opportunity to find a team who's desperate for that star and take away some assets. And the Knicks have that. They have the assets in young players who, might be looking for some contracts in the next 2-3 years, some bigger contracts that if the Knicks are trying to win now and get that superstar, they're not going to be able to afford those players. So you take them, you give them away, and then you get some draft picks with it. And for the Jazz, at this point in time, that's what we need. We need those assets to build up. And it's the time to do it. If you I look back, this trade with the Jazz and the Knicks, it's reminding me a lot of the trade that the Lakers did with Anthony Davis and New Orleans. They traded away all those young assets they had. Lonzo Ball, Kuzma, all those. Kuzma was still over there, but Ingram, and Hart, and Randall. They traded all these players away, and look at what those young players did in New Orleans. Like they didn't win right away, but they built themselves up to where last year in the playoffs, I was rooting for the Pelicans. I thought they were going to do it. I thought they were going to beat the Suns in the first round, and they took them to 7. Like that team didn't have Zion Williams, really. Like he kind of came last few games or whatever, but a lot of that is those players that went there in Ingram. He's become a great player for them. He's built that up, and then they've been able to trade for a superstar in CJ McCollum.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of see how the Jazz are in that position right now where they're going to be building up these assets to where they can get a couple of these players. Like Vanderbilt could be a player who maybe is not a first or second option on the team, but he could be a third player on the team that builds himself up to average 15 points a game, 12 rebounds, and just hustles. And then you get another player in a draft, this next draft, if we get the French player who's, 7'3", plays like Durant.
Wembanyama.
Yeah, or you get Scotty Henderson, the G League player, who a lot of players are like, this guy's going to be flashy. Yeah, so I mean, there's some good options that if we tank and if we can get one of those two players, and if they can develop enough, we got a shot to be pretty good in the future. And that's where the Jazz need to look. It's not now. And a lot of Jazz fans, I've been reading lots of comments saying, oh, this next year's going to suck. I'm not going to watch. Yeah, it's going to suck. If we trade away our best players, of course it's going to suck. But what you got to look at is look at the development, look at the fun side of that, right? And also think in 3-4 years, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, all those players are probably going to be retiring, right?
Yeah.
All those players leave. Damian Lillard, he's 32. He'll probably be done in the next 4 years, right? If that happens and the Jazz have some young pieces that are good, who's the next tier that's going to be better? That's us. And honestly, right now, if I'm the Jazz front office, if I was looking at the team we had compared to what some of these teams are building up, I still don't think that we would have been NBA title contenders this next year.
No, definitely.
So that's, in my opinion, that's why the Jazz do it now. It's because you're finding a team that's desperate for that star, who have young assets and have draft picks that we can be able to take away.
Definitely. I think, I definitely agree with that mindset. I think Danny Ainge is in harvesting mode right now. He's just seeing the field is white, just ready to bring in, right? And he doesn't mind what the past Jazz team has been. He doesn't see Donovan Mitchell as that guy, and so why is he going to spend more time with him? If he can get what he might be getting from the New York Knicks, then he's going to do it. He's going to throw that sickle in, and he's going to harvest in all those prospects and all those assets from the New York Knicks for the future of the Utah Jazz. And he's going to build his team the way he wants it to be. I think that's a big thing. Is like he doesn't want Donovan Mitchell, who last year seemed kind of out of it. Mindset was gone. I think his head was in the clouds, and maybe even in New York City. So I think we're jumping ahead of the possibility of losing Donovan in the future, and we're striking while it's hot, while the Knicks are desperate, and before Donovan gets hurt or his stock starts to plummet. Definitely. I think for the Jazz, the two main things that they're looking for in doing this trade is a clean slate and raising our ceiling. And these are some points that you already talked about, Tyler. Clean slate idea, just starting fresh and starting with a new spirit for a team. Last year was probably the most disheartening season I've ever watched as a Jazz fan. The losses that we had that we shouldn't have lost, the playoffs were just there was no heart in the team. And Donovan Mitchell himself actually showed a lot of disheartening moments. But so cleaning the slate, starting new with a new build, with guys that are motivated to make the league, guys that are motivated to play hard, that's going to be actually exciting for me to watch. And exciting for Danny Ainge to be able to put together something he can be proud of. But ultimately, it's going to raise our ceiling. I think Donovan Mitchell had a cap. He maybe possibly could have gotten the Jazz to the finals. He maybe possibly could have won the finals with the Utah Jazz if he built a perfect team around him. But that was like at the very peak, beyond the peak of what I could see Donovan Mitchell doing in this Utah Jazz. What this trading away Donovan to the Knicks does is it gives us assets, along with the Rudy Gobert assets, to build around a new core. And possibly that new core can have a higher ceiling than that. And I think that's why the Jazz do it, honestly. And it is going to suck next year, like you're saying. I was saying that too to my wife. Next year is going to be probably the worst year. But once 2024 hits, and we get those four draft picks, 4 rookies being brought in, the excitement's going to start building right then. The Utah Jazz are going to start becoming that up-and-coming team, and we're going to have more to talk about just one season away. So we'll have to just plow through this one season. It's going to be awkward, and it's not going to be as fun, but it's going to come quick, this rebuild. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Well, think back 3-4 years ago when John Morant was drafted.
True.
Memphis wasn't super great, but they were one of the funnest teams to watch. It's because they were young and they were scrappy and they played hard. And so honestly, with Hardy coming in, I'm hoping like if we do that, if Donovan does get traded, I hope the players just know like this is your audition to be like that Memphis Grizzly team, to be able to show them right now, like, yeah, we're going to be scrappy. We're going to play hard. We're going to play athletic. And in the future, watch out because we're going to be the number 2 seed in the West. Right. So it's all about heart, and it's the way that the players need to see it too. Like you're auditioning to be on this team for a future championship run if we can get some good pieces around you.
And I like those comparisons. I like the trade or the comparisons to the Grizzlies, the comparisons to the Pelicans. When the Grizzlies traded away Conley to the Utah Jazz, their ceiling was capped. They weren't going to make it far. But it was still hard for them to let go of that star that they've had for a long time and give in to a rebuild. But no one would have expected them to bounce back as fast as they did. I think a lot of Jazz fans aren't expecting to bounce back fast, but you mentioned the Grizzlies, you mentioned the Pelicans, and there's other examples around the league too of teams with all these assets. It's actually, a quick rebuild. There's a possibility that it maybe takes 1-2 years, and then you're back in the thick of it again, and you have a young, promising core to be excited and sure about. If you think about it, Jazz did it once Gordon Hayward left. So, no, it's definitely not as doomsday as some Jazz fans are making it out to be out there, but
yeah, I would agree. And the biggest thought that I have is if the Jazz do this, if you are investing into FUBU, I would definitely uninvest into them anymore because I think their subscriptions are going to go down a lot.
Yeah, true.
So
we'll be there, but but a lot of fans are not willing to stick it through. That is for sure.
No, exactly.
Let's get to the last question. Okay, so if you're Danny Ainge, let's say in the front office, you're getting calls from the New York Knicks, what is the offer that you take for Donovan Mitchell?
I honestly, if I was Ainge, and reports are saying, reports are going all over the place with this trade, but sky's the limit, really. The reason I say that, and it's like I said earlier, the Knicks are desperate for that star. I mean, New York media has been talking forever that they need a star, they need a star, they need a star. And then it's so funny now to watch, some of these New York media people hearing about this trade. They're like, the Knicks don't deserve Donovan Mitchell. It's like, New York media is so like up and down where they're like, it's such a mess over there. Like Donovan shouldn't go there because they're just going to mess it up for him, just like Carmelo and blah, 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 blah. But really it's the time to strike high because why not? We just got for Rudy Gobert from Memphis 5 future draft picks, right?
Yeah. Like
right now for Donovan Mitchell, who's a more attractive, talent than Rudy Gobert, go for it. Sky's the limit. I would definitely go for at least 2 young players. The 2 that I love is Quigley and Toppin. I don't know why, but those 2, I'm just like, if I only could get 2, I would go for those 2.
Well, if you listen to the Knicks fans, they're saying like, you can't touch. Like some are saying, don't touch Toppin. Toppin's ours. And some are saying, don't touch Quigley. Quigley's ours. Like they love Toppin and Quigley as well. We might get both.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's the Jazz aren't going to take on Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier. They're not just going to take the 2 veterans and not get any pieces out of it. So they're going to have to be willing to give up some pieces. And if I was them, I'm definitely not giving up RJ Barrett. The reason for me saying that is he's their small forward. He's 6'6". Quigley is 6'4", and he's more of a guard than a small forward. And if you are trading for Donovan Mitchell, you already have Brunson, who's 6'1". You got Donovan Mitchell, who's 6'1". Do you really want to go short? We've seen that doesn't really work out in today's NBA. You have like the Trailblazers. You have Lillard and McCollum. Those guys were great duo. They could never win it, and I think it's because we talked about earlier the Pelicans, how well they played. Yeah, McCollum played their point guard position, but other than that, they were 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", and 7 foot. That was their starting five. They were long, they were athletic. Look at the Celtics. Smart is 6'4". He was their shortest guy in their starting lineup. So I think the NBA is starting to go long, athletic, and I feel like the Jazz, that's what they're going to try to do in this trade. Try to get longer, try to get more athletic with some young guys. And in this next draft, with some of the pieces we have, I think that's what they'll kind of go after as well.
Yeah, definitely. So with Toppin and Quickly, you're saying those two. Any picks? Like, how many picks do you think they'll get?
I think so. If it was me, if I was Danny Ainge, the pick or the trade that I would take, the offer, I would take Quigley, Toppins, Fournier, because Fournier has to come for the money aspect, right? To be able to equal out. Those three, and I would go for 4 future first round picks and maybe a couple of second round picks.
Okay.
And that's what I would take as an offer. I personally think the reason this is taking a little bit longer, I think there's going to be a couple other teams involved in this trade. I don't know why, but I just think the Jazz are trying to wheel and deal like Bogdanovich and Conley, and I feel like there's going to be another team that's involved in this to where one of those two might go somewhere else. But I do believe the Jazz are going to get a good, hefty couple of first-round picks to come with us.
Definitely. For me, I will say I'm Danny Ainge sitting in the office, and they're saying we will give you Quentin Grimes, Obi Toppin, Fournier, Rose for the money aspect, and 2 unprotected, 3 protected.
Very nice.
So, obviously the Knicks, those 2 unprotected, Danny Ainge is going to want those from the Knicks. You know, they have a bunch of other picks from other people. He wants the Knicks to be those unprotected picks because he's going to be a savage in these dealings. But on top of that, Quentin Grimes is very exciting to me. I watch him. Very promising, very young. I'd rather have Quentin Grimes and Toppin over Quickly and Toppin, you know, just because I feel like Quickly maybe has shown what he can be already, whereas Quentin Grimes maybe has a higher ceiling and possibility in the future. So yeah, I'd be very excited to see that. And then obviously the picks, and Obi Toppin would be the main piece of that trade. The Jazz would then have plans with Rose, Fournier, not to just buy him out, but maybe to do that rumored deal where the Jazz take on Westbrook's contract from the Lakers. You know, so they send Fournier, Rose, maybe Clarkson or something, or somebody else to the Lakers. We bring in Westbrook and THT, and then we buy out Westbrook and we have THT to add to the young group that we're building on. So definitely that's a theoretical to the max, and obviously I kind of agree with you. I think there's going to be other teams involved, and so we could talk all day about the possibilities. thousands.
Oh yeah.
But one thing.
So here's
is
a question
sure,
for you, Parker. With those picks that you were wanting,
one thing is for sure, it's going to be one of the biggest trades.
which Danny Ainge is he has a little bit of a history with that, right? I mean, who would have thought Rudy Gobert was going to get all that assets back? Like, I had no idea. I thought it was just going to be something, small and maybe 1 or 2 first round picks, but dang, 5 and unprotected. And no. So here's a question though. You say, unprotected. Which years do you want those drafts or those trades? Because this next year, the Knicks have 2 first round picks. They have their own, and they have, I think it's the Mavericks. Can't remember. Washington maybe, but they have somebody else's first round picks. And do you take both of those? Do you take one?
I think for next year's draft, I think we take maybe both of their protected other team picks from them. They're going to be protected, and they're going to be not the Knicks picks. I think the Knicks picks got to be from the future. Obviously, the Knicks are going to be more reluctant to give those future picks, but Danny Ainge won't trade Donovan Mitchell unless he gets what he wants. So I think he's going to haggle that till the Knicks walk away or they finally give in.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that is because I think of it this way. With Rudy Gobert going to the Timberwolves, I don't see the Timberwolves being bad for the next 3, 4, 5 years, right? They have some pretty good young pieces. So those draft picks we got from them, they're not going to beat, lottery picks, presumably. I mean, unless there's some crazy injuries that happen, or if the rumors are true that Rudy Gobert is a real bad teammate and he just causes a bunch of contention and they go downhill, or maybe Patrick Beverley really was the heart and soul of Minnesota and that's why they won. Who knows, right? But if the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell, do you see them being, top 4 in the East with just Brunson, Mitchell, Barrett, and Randall?
Oh, so you're asking if I want Knicks pick next year versus in the future?
Yeah, because I would actually take the Knicks pick next year because I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be a top 5 team in the East.
Okay, so maybe number 12 team in the league. So
I think that pick would be anywhere from 15 to 20 because of the Knicks, and that's why I would think I would take that. Because then we still have a bunch of the other drafts the other picks for next year that we have already, and we could package something to get a B+ level player to put with this rookie and to build up on.
Yeah. And then the Jazz got to do their part in losing games. Will Hardy, that's your job. But yeah, definitely, I can see that. And I think the Knicks definitely will be more willing to give that pick up because they're going to believe in themselves, believe that they have that potential to be great next year. So yeah, I could see that being the possibility. For sure.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I love this time of year. I love the off season. I love our Jazz team. I love Rudy and I love Donovan, but it kind of makes me excited to see what the future actually will hold now, right? With some draft picks in the future, some younger pieces, and getting our team more athletic and large. That's my hope. I hope the Jazz just get a little bit longer because watching Conley and Mitchell have to guard some players, it just hurt. It was sad because they just got beat. And as much as the media blames Rudy, I don't think it's his fault. No. Our starting power forward, Royce O'Neal, was 6'4". That's small.
Yeah, I've never seen more porous defense. Honestly, I haven't. But yeah, definitely some changes. I think already our team is better defensively all around than it was last year. But definitely going to be missing Rudy's presence for sure. I'm excited to watch Rudy play for the Timberwolves.
Me too.
And I'm excited if it does go through, I think it will. I'm excited to see Donovan play for his hometown team. I think that's a good story, and I think that's best for him, maybe best for us as well. We'll see.
I definitely feel like these two players are not going to have a bad welcome home like Gordon Hayward did.
That's a good
I
guess.
think, they both gave a lot to our team. They both, were good to the fans and really pushed us to be better. And they didn't screw us over like Gordon Hayward. We had the chance to be able to do like a sign and trade or, really the Jazz poured everything into him. You remember they sent Ricky Rubio of all people that just got signed to his house in California, and he still didn't go to us. Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
But
how does Ricky not persuade you, if not just by his looks? Right?
I'm pretty sure they brought him just for his eyes. That's exactly what it was. But I don't know. It's sad to see them go. It really is, especially because like Donovan Mitchell, right? 13th pick overall. We didn't know much about Donovan Mitchell. Gordon Hayward had just lost. Our thoughts were, dang, this team's probably not going to be super great. We might make the playoffs. And they go on and they win the first round. Great series. He brought heart and soul. Quinn and him hugging. Like, you won't forget that moment if you're a true Jazz fan. Like, there was pure joy in seeing that. And just seeing the way that Mitchell has progressed and, like, seeing the way that Rudy. I remember the first game that Rudy played in, and he looked lost. He missed balls. Like, people would pass it, and he would, like, drop it. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this guy's aloof. Like, this is going to be awful. And now seeing him and just being, just so dynamic and so strong. Like, he, for his height and his ability to keep healthy and keep going and playing, like, testament to Rudy and just what he gave to the Jazz and the heart and soul that he put into playing basketball. You don't get that with a lot of tall guys. A lot of tall guys, they're tall and they know they could get millions of dollars for playing in the NBA. He cared. He really cared and tried to progress in his game.
Yep. And back to your Donovan Mitchell 13th pick in the draft. I just saw today somebody mentioned the Knicks had the opportunity before the Jazz to draft Donovan Mitchell, and they passed him up. So Donovan Mitchell better not ever forget who believed in him and who gave him his start that they gave him. Utah Jazz, but good for him if he goes to the New York Knicks, but he better not forget where he came from.
Darren Williams, and all these interviews that he has, he always thinks back, and his favorite time was playing in Utah.
Yep.
And a lot of that, this is a whole other topic for another day when we talk about Donovan. But, in the future, we might look back and say, like, Donovan Mitchell was great because of X Factor, and maybe part of it was Rudy Gobert. I know I was just looking at games last year that Rudy Gobert didn't play in, and we were seven wins, 9 losses. And I looked at each individual game, and Mitchell had a lot of really good games. But the interesting fact was the games that Hassan Whiteside and Azubuike did not play, or they didn't start him, Mitchell actually didn't play as well when he didn't have a big guy around him. Like, he would only average like 14 points or 16 points. He did have a weird year last year. But the games that like Whiteside played or Azubuike played with him, he averaged like 30 points. And part of me was thinking, and I don't know, this is just me thinking, is it because Rudy Gobert or these bigger guys set good screens or really open up like the law factor? Or was it Quinn Snyder's offense that made that difference? Like, I don't know. But, topic for the future, right? We'll see.
We're gonna
anything could happen.
We're going to keep an eye on that and talk about it in the future. If Donovan continues to thrive, great. If he starts to fall, we're going to be on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Talking about the reason why in the future. But I think that's it for today. This has been Built by Sports. Any of you who are still listening have made this far, thank you for listening. And make sure you comment down below, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll see us in our future videos talking about the NBA and Utah Jazz, local sports, and much, much, much more. So thank you for listening to By Sports. We'll see you.